Sometimes it can take several years to figure out a complex public property. There's a property that I found last year that's rather big for this area, but all the hunting seems to be up front. It has a hardwoods near the front of it, and then it goes down in the swamp, and that swamp is like red brush, tags, briars, and it's so thick you can hardly get through it, and it's wet. You're going through water, and you're going over your boots before it busts into cattails that are mixed with occasional tamarack trees. And there really isn't a lot of trees to hunt in. There's hardly any huntable trees once you get past the point. So most of the pressure is up front where the woods is. When we talk about overlooked spots, when you get into this spot and you get remote and you get deep and you get back, in there 1.5 miles, there really isn't much sign of humans at all. I'm pretty sure people walk through there occasionally looking for sheds and stuff, but I don't think it's getting a lot of hunting pressure. Last year, I ran a Moultrie cell cam on a small tamarack island about 1.5 miles back into the swamp. I ran it from July through February. I only really got one decent buck on the camera. It was a 3-year-old 10-pointer. It was a nice buck, but I was kind of looking for something bigger, so I didn't really put much pressure on this deer. And I had some consistent patterns of him hitting this tamarack island in daylight. One thing I like to do is after season, I go back and I look at the spots where I seen big bucks or decent bucks or up-and-comers. And this is definitely an up-and-comer who made it through the season because I seen him into February. So I know he's still around and still alive, and I know he'll be a shooter this fall at 4 years old. He was close this year. I noticed he was in early season, in September into early October, coming to the Tamarack Island from way out. There was a pattern there of him consistently doing that. So I want to go back and I want to look where he came from, see if there's any setups over there, look at the bedding, look if he used that bedding at some other time of the year and left a different way and didn't come by that island. So I want to determine if that's just early season bedding, or if it's later season bedding. He disappeared for a while between early season and rut. And then rut, he reappeared coming from point out of that thick brush near the hardwoods where everybody hunts, on the other side of that thick swamp. He was coming out of a point there. So I know he has to be bedding in there during rut at some point. And I want to go look over there and see if there's any setups right there. I'm imagining that this deer, when he hits 4 years old, is going to be a little more nocturnal. I'm going to need to get closer to that bedding. And where was he in that pre-rut time and during the end of the rut? I want to look at the middle of the swamp and see if I can find some spots out there. So I'm going to go out there and I'm going to try and figure out this deer a little better, and I'm going to bring you along for the ride. So I jumped in my truck and headed to the parking lot. When I got there, I had to walk through big open hardwoods and grass openings to get to the swamp. It was a long way to the back, but I went all the way to the back first. Oh, it looked bigger than that. Whoa. Look at that. What is caught on it? What the heck is this thing? Wonder if that cable had something to do with its demise. Choked it out or something. Doesn't go around the neck. The cables, pulleys, and rope were entangled in this buck's antlers. Wow. And appeared to be a dog run from somebody's yard. From what I could surmise is this deer got his antlers caught up in that dog run got all tangled up and fought hard to break free. And eventually, sometime during the night, broke those cables free, which were pretty thick steel cable. He was dragging those cables behind him, and you could see where they were broken, twisted off. I don't think the cable itself killed him. He wasn't choked. It wasn't around his neck. I think the stress killed him. I think he was so stressed out from the ordeal that it killed him. Where I found him was actually in a buck bed. He had laid there and curled up in a ball and died there. That might sound a little weird, but I don't think a lot of people realize deer die from stress all the time. For example, there was a township near me. They were trapping deer in a city environment and moving them to public land to release them. Such a large number of them were dying in transport from stress, just driving out of town, that they quit doing it. Or they would die in the traps from stress, the live traps. In another circumstance, with good tracking snow, during a drive many years ago, me and the boys were pushing a doe, and it kept going from section to section to section in an area that narrowed down. And when we finally caught up to it, we found it dead, and there wasn't a bullet hole in it. We pushed it till it died. It stressed out, had a heart attack. It happens. And that's what I think happened to that buck. I nudged a deer and it doesn't move. I'm like, well, maybe I hit it. So I started looking around. There isn't a bullet hole on this thing anywhere.
Yeah, we never found a bullet hole anywhere.
No.
Field dress and everything, there was no bullet holes. That thing had a heart attack.
No blood in it.
But we chased that thing through 3 drives.
This deer was running circles around him in here, and I picked it off from way up on that hill, but I have yet to see any blood or anything. I don't know if it had a heart attack or what, because I can't figure out where I hit it. There's no blood on the whole trail in here, even in the snow.
Where did you hit it?
I have no idea. Wherever it was fatal.
Yeah. I don't know where you
Not one drop of blood anywhere.
That's the way to kill him. You don't spoil meat.
Yeah. There's no blood. She belly crawled to here and just died. I think she knew the big buck serial killer was after her and just had a heart attack and died.
You can tell me your thoughts down below. I wandered through the woods, through the swamp, through the cattails, and went all the way back 2 miles to where I saw the buck coming out of in early season.
Last season, after spring scouting, I set a camera over here and I hunted over here. And I saw a pretty good 3-year-old buck, quite a bit. Probably could have killed him if I got aggressive about it, but I went after some other bucks, but that buck made it through the season. I watched his pictures all year. And he came out of here a lot. It's a place I didn't look, because this is really remote, and it's just solid cattails, but you see there is a tree or two in here. And I followed a bunch of trails back here, and right in this area here, alongside of a waterway, the popular duck hunting waterway, there's a lot of beds right in here. I mean, this whole ground is tore up with trails and beds. I don't know if you can see that, but this should be solid cattails like over there. I mean, right there I can see from here a decent rub. Now look at, here's another heavy trail. And that rub might not be very big around, but it's up high on that tamarack. And there really isn't a lot to rub in here. Here's another one I didn't see. There is a tree back here, but man, they're in here in the morning. You know what I mean? You'd have to boat in here and get into that tree. But looking at this, you know, it is pounded down. See clumps of poop, but the poop is really old. Well, everybody's always asking me about indicators for aging the sign, trying to do the timing, to do the detective work. You know, I don't see anything that looks that fresh. Those rubs don't look very fresh. They could have been done in November, maybe not, but they're like the only rubs. But looking around, trying to determine age, you know, there's a good bed. You know, you can tell that these beds right here were used a lot. And these beds are in the shade of this tree, which no longer has leaves. Oh, I can see a little rubbing on this tree here too. And you get in here and it's not matted down that much. Some sticks have fallen in there and you can tell they haven't been laid on. There's no fresh tracks. Here's another bed here. No fresh tracks. Sticks laying in it that have been there a while. There's more beds over there. Kind of the same thing. You know, so you look at this, and I'd have to say, being out in this blaring sun, unless these cattails are laying down and stuff, they're not here much. So probably early season, but I mean, it could go all the way to November, maybe. Here's a rub here, small buck. There's no mold on it or anything, it's just barren. That's a poison sumac. Anywho, I'm gonna say this is pretty early in the season, especially when you start looking at beds out here. You know, this bed here, I mean, to get out of the sun, this grass would have to have been pretty high. You could hardly see the bed no more, but you can tell there was a bed here. Now here, this tells the story right here. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 shotgun shells in a bed. See the poopies and see the hair? There's a deer hair, poopies. Guys are coming in here to duck hunt for the, you know, when the ducks are coming in here, and that is definitely, right in the middle of October they come in here, and they're going to be in here through the season. So that tells me all of these beds were before mid-October. So I'd say this spot probably needs to be, if I was going to hunt right here in September, or right in early October, before guys get back here bird hunting.
Yeah, I know. Easy for Dan to know this was early season bedding when he had a Moultrie camera monitoring the exit trail. Yeah, but hear me out. So I didn't know for sure if that was the only exit, and if they were using it at a different time of the year. I needed to confirm. I also needed to find some hunting spots in there. Just because I knew he came out of there at a certain time frame didn't mean he wasn't coming out of there a different way at a different time frame. A lot of times exits from bedding areas have to do with certain things. They go this way for this food, they go this way for rut, they go this way for a different food. So there could be several exits that come out of a bedding area.
I do want to see this clump of trees right here. I want to see if there's any bedding in there, because that is a little thicker cover that could hold deer a little later. And just see if they're in there. There is a trail heading that way. That's some pretty old poopies. It's starting to deteriorate and fall apart and turn into dirt. And all the poopies I'm finding look like that. Here's another little bed. Couple old poopies in it, a couple hairs. Now the trails are starting to spider, telling me there's going to be bedding in here, which we've already found a couple beds. But I can pretty much tell you, you see a clump of trees like this in the middle of cattails, there's going to be beds. Oh yeah, look at this bed here. This is a good one. This is a well-used bed here. Look at that. Little cave. They like that. But as you can imagine, these branches here would have pine needles. These are tamarack trees, and tamarack pine is the only pine tree that loses its needles. And that would create a cave. They're bedding in the cave. So that's what we're going to try and find in here, is some places where they got a little shade under a tree. You know, not as many cattails that they got to lay down flat under a tree, because the shade keeps them from growing. So here's a trail going in there to a little bed. Here's a heavy trail coming in here with a couple little beds on it. Another trail coming in here. And right now we are, from parking, we're probably 2 miles, through water too. So I don't think too many people get out here, but they are obviously coming from the water to duck hunt. So there's guys coming in that way. That's even a pretty hard access, so I don't think any deer hunters are doing it. I could be wrong, but you'd think you'd find sign. And really, coming in from that way, you'd have to go quite a ways to get to forest, which is what most people are looking for. Okay, now we're in the middle of those trees. There should be some beds in here. Wow, there's a massive trail through the middle of it. You can see a little bed there. That was most likely a bed. There's a rub. Yeah, this would be a jungle when these trees have needles on them. And this trail is really heavy, these trails in here. So obviously there's deer getting back here.
I moved a little further back into a little more open grassy area surrounded by cattails, but still kind of along that waterway.
See, look at how low this grass is. Actually, during the summer, this is quite high, you know, much higher. And you can see there's cave beds under here. You look at that now, there is no time during most of the season that a deer would lay there, but those are obviously beds. So that would probably be right around the start of the season and in the summer. You know, when this grass and cattails and stuff is this high, and they can get out of the sun. That's the reason I'm bringing that up. I mean, that might be kind of obvious, but those other beds are right there, you know? So we're looking at this like giving an overall picture of this area, what time of the year deer are in here. Got a wall of cattails here right on the edge. The wind comes over like this. This bed's on the edge looking out, right? Right here, here. This one's full of poopies. Right there, there's some poopies in that one too. Again, you can kind of tell those were pretty much early season. But you see, they, you know, when their needles were on, they had a wall of cover. And what's interesting about this spot is even a little later, they could see out if something was coming and have these cattails for escape. They could smell with the wind blowing in like this from the water. And they could see down here. Here's another one. Up these heavy trails here, I get to here and I see a spot that is just really, really knocked down. And there's some brush here going out in kind of a little point up to the water's edge. And this is creating some sort of bedding area here because this is really getting used. Yeah, a lot more wear here. A lot of wear. This is just knocked down like crazy. There's both coyote and deer poop right there. Old, but that's what it is. It's interesting I don't see any rubs in here. And early in the year they don't do a lot of rubbing. Oh, here's one. See those little black spots? That's mold. And that mold, it's got to be kind of warm when this is rubbed for that to mold when this is wet. If they're done later in the year, you notice they're just polished. This has little black mold spots. See that? So I'm saying this is early season, but look at this. And even so, I mean, you look at this. Ain't a deer gonna lay here right now, or even during the season too much. But early in the year they would, and you can see how they kind of gravitated later on. And that stuff's starting to spring up a little bit. This is still matted down, but it's under the tree cover. So when there's leaf cover here, this is probably not a bad spot. Yeah, look at this. This is just pounded, worn down. Let's see what they're doing in here. Here's a bed here. Here's some beds here. There's a possibility if they really like it. This ain't a bad spot like right now, wouldn't be bad. But it is kind of close to the duck hunters. Those beds we were just looking at are underneath that tree there. Now that we've gotten into thick cover, here's a bed right here. It's just worn down, a couple of them. Again, no rubs on the trees, at least not from this year. But you can see that there's something laying in here quite a bit at some point in time. Oh yeah, here's a matted down bed right here. I can see a hair right there. You see that? Right there, there's a hair. There's a bed here. Now you get in here, these could be bedded in a little later in the year, but Again, there's gonna be duck hunters right here, I think. So I'm thinking it's early season based on that clue. Yeah, here's a bed here. I'm certainly not seeing the rubs you'd see if they're in here in October. Even if there's does in here in October, there'd be rubs. The difference would be the bucks rub into beds, the bucks seeking does rub the perimeter trees, and I don't see either. So again, I'm saying this whole thing is early season, and there's probably some deer in here early season. Bet you if we did a camera study, it'd be just full of deer for like the month of September, and they'd start fading out in October, and then they'd be gone as soon as the duck hunting started. That's my best guess.
Okay, so now we determined that the whole edge of that waterway gets duck pressure. It's got early season bucks in there, probably pretty heavy, but they're not in there after early season. So we got that pretty pinned down. So now we want to look at the middle of the marsh. It's away from the duck pressure, away from the hardwood pressure, kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and see if we can figure out the timing in this area and where we would hunt.
So looking at my phone and zooming in on aerials in this swamp, one of the things I'm looking for is what I call swamp spiders. And what a swamp spider is a little tiny piece of high ground or bushes or something inside of a swamp. And you see trails spidering out from it. And on an aerial, it almost looks like the center is a round spot that looks like the middle of a spider, and all the trails are the spider's legs. What I mean by like this round bed here, this high spot that's up out of the water, is a bedding area. And then the trails that you see, these heavy trails coming in and out of here in every direction like this, all leading to this spot. This is a pretty good one. That's a pretty good one too. Those look like the legs, right? So this little round body on the aerial looks like the body. When you look here, you see different ages of poopies. I mean, there's a real old pile of poopy there. Here's some newer poopies. They still got a little shine to them. You can see these have lost their shine completely. Those are from a long time ago. Those are kind of mid-range. These are a little bit newer. These poopies, they're older, drier, they've lost their shine. Same here. Those are really old. And there's some there. But there's poopies everywhere. I mean, there's little piles of poopies everywhere. So deer are spending a lot of time here. Now, when you get into a spot like this, the aging part of it, one clue that I saw right away was this broken branch here. That's a pretty big broken branch, right? If you look below it, you can see the scrapings. They kind of made a scrape there. You go over here, you see another one. You can kind of see where the hooves dug in a little bit, and more broken branches with little hairs sticking in them. And they're coming in here and they're making scrapes. Now this is more like a doe bedding area because this is kind of open, it's circular, and you see how a lot of animals laid in here at once. I'm thinking doe groups are bedding here. You know, it's up out of the water, and the bucks are probably coming here to check on the does, and they're probably real close, like along this transition. And this sign is telling me late October, early November. This is rut sign. So these bucks are leaving rut sign in a bedding area. Now, granted, I kind of believe this is doe bedding, but those scrapes are marking those does, and I believe those bucks at that time frame will be really close by. Right in here someplace. So, just one more clue, one more part of the aging process. Okay, so the swamp spider is right where that tree is, about 10 yards from me, 12 yards, something like that. And I walk through here and I find this heavy trail on the downwind side, marked with a good rub, and heavy trail, poopies. There's even a fresh track. I mean, you look at this rub, there's no mold spots on that, it's just shined up. I think that's a November rub. There's another one, there's another one. Look at this tree here, holy cow. Just notice this. This one is just ripped up. aggressively, right? And there's rubs all the way down. Even though these are tamaracks, they don't like to rub. And they're rubbed right downwind of the swamp spider. This is bucks winding that bedding area, the doe bedding area, to see if they're there. So this is where you'd want to hunt, is along here someplace, watching this, like from back here someplace. You know, kind of hard to get in a tree here, but you could do it maybe. You might be able to get just off the ground in that tree there. Poke an arrow through here. You'd be just over the cattail height. You know what I mean? So, if a guy got like, yeah, here's a bed too. I wouldn't doubt it if that's where a buck lays to monitor those does. But the guy could get a tree stand right there, this high, right here, have the cover behind him. Just clip a couple of branches. Might want to do that now. Maybe even clip so you can shoot behind you just in case, because you can see all the way to the transition over there. But you really would be shooting that trail. You just have a little opening right through here. But now when you found this now would be the time to break a couple branches off there for next season to get an arrow through here. You can kind of see there's a spider of trails through here too, but they're winding that bedding area, and that trail's the main trail, and you can see how it's marked up with bucks. It'd be a good spot in rut. Just came into another swamp spider here. See it on the aerial pretty good with these trails coming in and out. There's a rub there marking that trail going out. There's a rub here that's been rubbed for years. You can see the old scar and new fresh rubbings on it, and old. And bed's just covered in poopies. See the frame of a deer there, here. There's another rub. But see now, look at that rub, look at this rub. And this is what I was talking about. Now this is a tamarack, but look at how moldy that is. See that dark mold on there? The spots? That was from early season. So this was rubbed, and this was moist and tacky and sticky when it was hot out, which the warm weather allowed that to mold. You're not gonna see that on the rubs done or in November. Like this rub, same kind of tree, and there's a little bit of mold in there I can see, but not a lot. So it's kind of in between. But we showed you the one before that was just clean, right? That was a November rub. Yeah, there's more beds over there. There's beds all over in here. But you just see this on a map. All the trails just meet right here. And you see that kind of this high spot. Everything else is underwater. This is a higher spot. So here's another swamp spider, and it's right on a point. It's got some pretty high up rub trees in here, and a lot of rub trees. A lot in comparison, I should say, a lot of historical. And now that one's pretty polished. There's nothing on there. It's really no black dots. Still pretty red. That's probably a November rub. You see the shape of a deer in that bed there. You see where his back lays when the wind's blowing like this. You see beds over there. Beds right here with poopies in them. Rubs by those beds. Yeah. Pretty good little tangle right here. Right on 8 point. You see rubs over there. There's probably beds all over this point actually. But you can really see this spot from an aerial. You see all the old rubs, so this is historically used every year. Here's a bed here with a rub in it. Right there. Fresh and old. Yeah, here's the point coming together here. There's a pretty good size diameter-wise rub. Poopies in a bed underneath it. Coyote poopy. Other poopies. See, he's bedding right here. See, all polished up, no black dots.
The first swamp spider that we found was doe bedding. You could see the circular bedding area. You could see how the buck rubs were on trails that went past. Check the scent trails of the does going in and out. Check downwind. The rubs were on perimeter trails. But the second two spiders that we found The rubs were in the beds. The beds were more singular in nature, up against an obstacle, into the shade, a little packed in, specific positions to monitor. Those were buck bedding areas. So both bucks and does use what we call the swamp spiders. It's also noteworthy to point out that in this case, the trail did go to the primary downwind side, the buck trail, of the doe bedding area that we called the swamp spider, the first one. That's not always the case. A lot of people talk about hunting the downwind side of doe bedding areas. A lot of times I see bucks cruise the side that just has the trails going in and out, and they smell the trails. And if the does are going in and out there, they'll smell if the doe was in heat. And they don't need to actually smell the doe. They'll smell the track and follow it in. So keep that in mind. I've seen that quite a few times. It's not all that uncommon. So now I moved a lot further in. I went to the other side of the island and went closer to my access, where that point came out of that thick swamp where I watched that buck come in and out of during the last week of October, first week of November on the camera.
So I had a camera on that island there, and that's where that 10-pointer was going in there, and a lot of the traffic from him in the late October, early November time frame came right up this trail to that island. But this is where he was coming through, for sure. This goes right to there. And I kind of overlooked this area in here. And this is a pretty heavy trail, and this is the one he was taking. And that rub has no mold spots. That's obviously the time frame. There's another one. The time frame that he was in here, there's another one. Going right through this crap. This actually looks kind of like a bedding area. But if I start finding beds in here, because right on the transition on a point of trees. Yeah, this would be a jungle when these trees got cover. That one's been hit a little bit. Yeah, where's he living at in here? So if he ain't living right here, a guy could hunt him right on this point. It is kind of thick though. I don't know if I can get a shot through this crap. There's the trail going that way. Still no beds. There's another trail going this way. This is a point though, everything kind of probably meets here. I can tell I kicked up a deer because there's hair floating. See that? On the water. Someone ran through here. Yeah, there's more of it. Look at this. Because this is the only way they can get their antlers through here. You look at this, they have to stay on this trail. So if there's a big buck back here, he is on this trail. So anywhere back here, you could create a spot to get a shot to this trail. You can pretty much expect that he's going to be on it. Now a doe or something might filter through some of the other areas, but this trail is busted open for antlers to get through. You see how they break the branches off with their antlers. It's busted down. Still haven't seen any bedding yet though. I would have expected them to be on an edge. Maybe there's a high spot in here or something. Now we kind of left that thick stuff and then there's some ultra thick stuff, and now I can see some beds right on this transition. Not a lot of them, but there's one good one right there. And now we're getting to the point where we really couldn't get antlers through here too much, and there's a bed over there. Yeah, there's another one over there. So I think this is it. It's just one buck, so he's not leaving a lot of marks. And I only saw him for rut. So geez, just looking at this bedding area, you wouldn't put that together. And there's another bed there. You'd probably just pass this bedding area over. But I seen the buck come out of here. I put a camera on it and I seen him come out of here like 5 days in a row. So I know there's a time period when he's bedding here. So there's nothing better than, a visual. And I say it all the time, but I think it goes right over the top of people's heads. You see a deer in season, you get a picture, you know a time frame. He was moving in an area in daylight, especially if it's more than once. You've got a time frame, you got a timeline. Now go back and check on it. So now I go back in here and I see those beds just bottom out where it gets too thick for that deer to get through. Now, that's not to say he couldn't get through. And right now we're taking an escape trail back out of the back side of it. But we got to a point where it got so thick, he wouldn't want to try to push his antlers through this. But he would if he had to. This is the escape. So I could see where he bedded. In that spot, I would not really, I'd walk right through that and never really know that that's a good buck bedding area, even with all my experience. But what gives me that bedding area is the timing that I'd already figured out. I have that buck on camera coming out of there. I think 5 days in a row, but probably 10 or 12 times in that late October, early November time frame. In and out of that trail, coming in and out of there. Got it on camera. So I know what happens, and I know he's bedding in there for a time frame. It isn't tore up with rubs. It isn't tore up with sign. There's some beds in there. The main thing is that heavy trail going in there, and it just bottoms out. I think the sign in here, there's probably more bedding in here than you'd think, but some terrains and some spots just don't show it to you. It just doesn't glow, you know, where they laid and stuff as much. But I know he came out of there. So now I know that bedding, I know where it is, and I know how I could slip up close. Interesting. Probably be a ground hunt, but if I got that deer on camera again next year further out, I go right to that tip. Or I could just do it that time frame, which is probably a better idea. The camera I had out here was on private land, but not by far. It was on private land by probably 50, 60 yards. And then I was hunting right on the edge of the public. It was the best spot to hunt. So I was hunting on private land, but I would have shot the deer on public land, which, I mean, for a buck, that's just fine and dandy, doesn't really matter. But in Wisconsin, if you were gonna shoot a doe in that situation, it gets a little tricky, because you have to buy a specific tag for a doe, whether you're gonna shoot it on public land or private land. And I can't find anywhere in the law or the rule books where it specifies, can you shoot from private to public or from public to private, and which designates whether the doe was public or private. I was hunting on private, but if I was shooting on public, Wisconsin's got some crazy laws. It sure does. If you think you understand the law better than I do, if you're hunting on private, shooting on public, is that even legal to take a doe in that manner? And if so, is the doe a public land doe or a private land doe? You tell me. Trail coming up out of a swamp onto a high spot. Here's a bed. Here's a random duck decoy. All chewed on by coyotes. Wood duck decoy. So old, the paint's faded off of it. Oh, there's a fishing rod. Oh my gosh. Are you kidding me? We're in the middle of a swamp. Oh geez. I can't even crawl through this stuff. It's so thick. I'm stuck in it. Here we go, fishing rod. What the heck is this? Oh my gosh, it's something to do with the duck hunting because it's got a weight on it. What the heck? This is a decoy weight. Another buck bed, sleeping with it. This fishing rod. Wonder if this is how he fetched his duck decoys. I don't know, there's no real water around here, nothing that would hold fish. It's just swamp. There's a couple potholes for ducks. Interesting. Well, it's not a shed antler, but it's kind of funnier than a shed antler. You never know what you'll find. I am literally in the middle of a freaking swamp. I mean, I did see a, like, I don't know, you could call it a pond, but it's about a foot deep. And it's about 20 feet long and about 10 feet across. And somebody could have duck hunted in that pond, but they'd have had a hell of a time getting there. Literally. But at least they bought a fishing rod through this tangle of crap. I can't even crawl through this stuff. Oh, there's the pond. You can kind of see it from up here. That has to be where they were duck hunting. And they're probably sitting up here, and probably at the time from when they were here, this brush wasn't this thick at this spot. This is probably where they were hunting from.
I bet you they were using the fishing rod to move the duck decoy to make it lifelike.
Some people say a buck is made out of meat, antlers and fur and 4 fast feet, a brain that's sharp, a harem of does, and you're sure not going to beat that incredible nose. You hunt for 14 days, and what do you get? 2 weeks older and no buck yet. I was born one day, it was blowing snow. I crawled out of my crib and grabbed my bow. You hunt for 14 days, and what do you get? 2 weeks older, no buck yet. I went hunting in the pouring rain. My daddy said, "Boy, are you insane? You hunt for 14 days, and what do you get? 2 weeks older and no buck yet." You hunt for 14 days, and what do you get? 2 weeks older and no buck yet.